Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
We are studying with a scholar of Hebrew and of Jewish history. We are studying with someone who writes about Jewish language and Jewish culture. The etymology of Hebrew words, you have people geek. Like, do you see that? People, you're in the right crowd.
Thank you, Rachel.
Right crowd. And so he has a column in Haaretz. And so how many columns have you already?
Probably 600, maybe 700.
600 to 700 columns, treating an origin of a Hebrew word and how it permeates, throughout the development of the language. He has accessed legends of the Talmud and other midrashic sources. So he if you watch his videos, in a very short time, he succinctly covers a lot of midrashic ground in terms of the characters involved and how they appear in Jewish midrash. So if you want, in a nutshell, what the rabbis say about the talking donkey, or this one or that one, then or Serach, but Asher, you can look at his videos. But truly, those of us who love the Hebrew language are so excited to have you with us. Let's say our bracha for Torah study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We bless the source of life who gives us ways of living into holiness, one of which is to engage with words of Torah. And I now hand it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you for joining me. I'm very excited to talk to you about Tisha B'Av and where it comes from. I don't know, how many people actually fasted on Tisha B'Av here. I'll be honest, I didn't. But, it's an important Jewish day of remembrance. And I assume many of you think you know what Tisha B'Av is about.
We've been studying it a little bit in our Friday morning.
But there's some mysteries in it that needed to be answered, and I believe I answered, so I'd like to convince you of that. And if you don't believe me, that's also okay. So the origin, I think I can ask around, why do we have Tisha B'Av? Are we commemorating anyone's?
Yeah, come on.
The destruction of that day, or the sadness, heartaches, the breaks.
Excellent. So what you're essentially quoting from is the Mishnah. That's our earliest source that tells us Tisha B'Av, and that's Mishnah Ta'anit 4:6, which you will see is your source 1. 5 things befell our ancestors on the 9th of Av. It was decreed that our ancestors would not enter the land. The temple was destroyed the first time, and the second time, Beital was captured, and the city was plowed under. So that's pretty straightforward. Somebody chose the 9th of Av because that's the date that the temples were destroyed, which miraculously both were destroyed on the same day. But
Justin, next, are you reading again?
Oh yeah, we're going to go one by one.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a problem. If we look at the Bible, we read that the temple was not destroyed on the 9th of Av. Let's look at source number 2, which is 2 Kings 25:8-9. And in the 5th month, the month of Av, on the 7th day of the month, came Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, and he burnt the house of the Lord. Okay, so Kings tells us it's actually on the 7th of Av. But let's look at source 3, which is Jeremiah 5:12-13. It's basically the same story, a little different wording. And it says, in the 5th month, on the 10th day of the month, came Nebuzaradan, and he burned the house of the Lord. So the Bible doesn't really agree with itself, but either way, it's not saying the 9th of Av. So whoever decided this is somewhat unusual. You may say, okay, so maybe the second temple was burned near the 9th of Av. Surely the second temple was burnt on the 9th of Av. But we have an eyewitness account. The Jewish historian Josephus was there, and in War of the Jews, 645, he writes, but as for the house of God, and for that house, God had for certain long ago doomed it to the fire, and now that fatal day has come. According to the revelation of the sages, it was the 10th day of the month Loas, which is Av, upon which it was formerly burnt by the king of Babylon. So Josephus already knows that the temple was burnt on the 10th, so he's going after Jeremiah. And he saw himself that it was burnt, the second temple was burnt on the same day, the 10th of Av. So that's somewhat puzzling then. Like, if our sources agree that the temple was destroyed on the 10th or the 7th of Av, who would make a decision that we should fast on the 9th of Av? And in fact, the rabbis were not unaware of this problem. And we have our fifth source, this is in the Talmud, Rabbi Yochanan, who's the most important rabbi of the Palestinian tradition, the Talmud Yerushalmi. And he tells us, had I lived in that generation, the generation who made the decision, I would
to commemorate
on the 9th of Av. I would have fixed it only on the 10th, which makes sense. I think we will all agree that would make more sense. So here's the mystery. Somebody made a mistake. Something odd happened here. Like there's a problem. That's the problem I set out to confront and find out who this person is and why he made that, he or she, most likely he, to be honest, made that decision. Okay, so it's we'll go through the whodunit, which I did myself when I researched this for a book I wrote.
Can I interrupt for just one second? So why is no one else asking this question? Because they just don't know. I didn't realize there was a problem.
I mean, I'm like people have noticed. I'm assuming it's in the Talmud. So the rabbis of the Talmud have been studying the Talmud, so people knew about this. But I think it seems like an unsolvable mystery. And also the traditional view is that, and we'll get to that in a second, is that the temple was destroyed, that Tisha B'Av was founded during the time of the first temple being destroyed. And then it's really, in the exile, it's really hard to go back and we don't know any of that period. So there's no sources to go through. So the temple was destroyed, some anonymous exile decided on the 9th of Av, and that's the generation Rabbi Yochanan is probably talking about, the generation of the exile that made this. That's what they believe. But we'll see in a second that, in fact, that's not what happened. Therefore, there is sources to look for. And in fact, I think the solution was there for anyone to find it. It's not I didn't need a super computer or not exceptionally smart. It was written down. Somebody needed to set out and look for it. That being said, I wrote an article for Haaretz about the same subject, and I gave a different solution, which I now regard as the wrong solution to the problem. So there's other ways to solve this, but there's only one that's right. And that's the one I'm telling you now. Okay, so before I answer we seek out who this person was and what he was thinking, I'd like to talk about what the fast is for. Why do we even do this fast? Because that also goes into the answer. Okay, so I think today most of us think of it as like a day of mourning. The fast is a part of a mourning ritual, but the ancients didn't see it that way, and the people that founded it didn't see it that way. And we can see the way they viewed the fast in the Bible. It sets it out pretty clearly what's going on, what they're thinking. The Bible and also in rabbinic writing. So in 2 Samuel, this is your source 6, chapter 12, we have King David, and his son is very ill and might die. And then it says, David sought God on behalf of the boy, and David fasted a fast. And on the 7th day, the child died. His servants, and then he goes and says, okay, right after the child is dead, he goes, bring me food, I want to eat. Sits down and eating. And then the servant said to him, what is this thing you have done? For the child's sake, while he lived, you fasted and wept. And when the child died, you rose and ate bread. He said, while the child was still alive, I fasted and wept. For I said, who knows? The Lord may be gracious to me and to my child, and my child may live. But now he is dead. Why should I fast? Can I bring him back again? Oh. So you see, it's a method to force God, to supplicate oneself before God and ask him to undo a punishment you've been dealt out. So you fast to change God's mind.
So that's what.
We'll get to that. But we can already, based on that, if you want to think for a second, why do we fast? Well, what are we trying to achieve? What punishment of God are we trying to reverse? If this is the psychology behind it, what is it?
Destruction.
Yeah, so what are we trying to get God to do?
To
rescind it, to rebuild our temple. So by fasting annually on the date of the destruction of the temple, we're trying to get God to rebuild the temple, okay? So we have here in Jonah the same idea. We don't need to read it. This is source 7. Once again, the people of Nineveh, Jonah came to them and told them that God is very angry at them because they're wicked and that he destroyed their city and everyone that's in it. And they fast and ask for forgiveness, and this works. God relents and the city is not destroyed, which makes Jonah really sad because now he's a false prophet, because he's a comic figure, and that's a story for another day, also related to Shabbat, but we can skip that. Okay, so we're going to go to the next page, which for me is here. Okay, so maybe one more thing, because we only talked about rabbinic sources. Let's also say that in all the biblical sources, this idea that fasting is a way to get God to change his mind about punishment continued into the early rabbis. Masechet Ta'anit, which is the part of the Mishnah and later the Talmud dealing with these fasts, discussed mostly what to do when it doesn't rain, divine punishment, and how a town will fast and make the rain fall again. So again, it's the same psychology. We're fasting in order to get God to make it rain, or if there's a storm and there's a ship out at sea, it's the same idea. Those are the case studies that are discussed in the Mishnah Ta'anit. So the rabbis thought that they were doing that. So when you get to the person who actually does it, that's what he's thinking. That's what he has in mind. Okay. So now the way to continue on to find this person, I think about it like a detective in a murder mystery, right? You want to decide in what time frame did the event happen. It had to be before this, it had to be after that, so we can identify the person.
So fixing the date.
Making a window. We want a window when this could have happened.
Fixing it as the ninth of Av.
Yeah, when the event of fixing it took place, because we're looking for our suspect. So think about a murder, and the detective wants to know. So they have video evidence, or the coroner tells them the time of death, so they can fix it had to have happened between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock, and then the people that were in the room at that time, those are the suspects, and anyone who wasn't in the room at that time isn't. So we're doing that now. I do this with all the historic events that I try to research and try to identify. If there's a tradition, I want to know when it would have happened, and then we can look for the person. We have, and this is once again the traditional view, the earliest mention we have of a fast for commemorating or for not commemorating, for changing God's mind about the destruction, comes to us from the book of Zechariah. This is in 7:3, source 8. And here we have a delegation, Babylonian Jews. They come to Jerusalem. This is right at the beginning of the Second Temple period. So there's a restoration. And they're wondering, okay, we've been fasting, that's what they said. We've been fasting for 70 years now since the temple is destroyed. And now, do we continue fasting? Or that's it, we already got what we wanted. And
because they're rebuilding.
Because they're rebuilding, yeah. So is it over? This is what it says. Shall I weep in the 5th month, abstaining, as I have done for these many years, when you fast? And then Zechariah answers. Now, prophets, when they answer, their answers are somewhat ambiguous. Not clear. So it could be read several ways, but let's try to understand what it says. When you fasted and mourned in the 5th and the 7th month, these 70 years, did you fast for me? So the way I read it is God, he's speaking in the name of God. And he's saying what do I care if you're fasted? You're not fasting for God. You're fasting for yourself, which I think implies you don't need to fast anymore because God doesn't care whether you fast. It was your own thing. So that could imply that the fast was over at that point. Of course, we don't know for sure, and I think traditional Jews will likely believe that it isn't so, that the fast continued. So I don't think it continued, and I'll give you the evidence I have for the fast being abolished at that time. Okay, so first of all, if you look at the Second Temple writings, the fast of Tisha B'Av, and of course, Tzom D'Aliyah and the other four fasts, they're not mentioned in any of our sources. Not the Book of Maccabees, not the writings in Qumran, not in Josephus, and not in Philo. Admittedly, there's not that much writing in the period. And the fact that it's not mentioned is not so surprising. So the fact that there isn't any mention is not proof that it wasn't. But if there was mention, then it would be proof that it was. Okay, so that's something. But I think we have some very good evidence that it was, in fact, not around. For one, both Philo and Josephus, when talking about Yom Kippur, they're writing in Greek, and they call it the fast. So this implies that there is one annual fast and not a particular fast. There's different fast areas. So that's somewhat evidence. But I think the best evidence is the one that we already read, is Josephus describing the destruction. I think if there was a fast on the 9th of Av at the time, he would have brought it up. We've been fasting for 400 years. Maybe he would have explained, it was destroyed on the 10th. We fasted the 9th. I don't know why. He would have given some information on that. The fact that he's completely silent on that, I think, is the best evidence we have that there was no annual fast. There was no Tisha B'Av at the time. So, in other words, almost certainly the fast was established. The earliest it could have happened was when Josephus was writing War of the Jews in Rome in about the year 90. Okay, so it's after that. Okay, now for the earlier then, we already quoted that quote. We read from the Mishnah. So the Mishnah is dated to about 200. So it had to have been before the Mishnah. And you may say, okay, maybe Rabbi Judah the Prince, who compiled the Mishnah, may have done it. But we have this quote from the Tosefta.
Wait. So I'll slow down for a second. Okay. So 586, the first temple is destroyed. We're looking at 518. So this is when Cyrus has allowed the Jews to come back and to start rebuilding Jerusalem and the temple. So 518, that text in Zechariah, is the folks who are rebuilding, and our professor here is suggesting that that negates the need for a fast, because if you're fasting for God to rebuild the temple and you're already engaged in rebuilding the temple, why would you need the fast? So, and now when he's looking at the time of the crime, because Josephus doesn't mention it when he's talking about the destruction and talking about dating the destruction, and doesn't mention a fast on the 9th, and mentions all these other dates, that absence is kind of glaring if there is, in fact, a practice of fasting on the 9th. Josephus would have said, even though it was destroyed on the 10th, we fast on the 9th, whatever. So he doesn't say anything. So that date, Josephus is writing in 90 CE, right? 90 of the Common Era. So that's the latest. If he doesn't talk about it,
somebody must have did it.
Somebody must have invented it after that.
So it was a year span.
So wait, so it has to happen after Josephus. We know that. Okay, right. So that's 90. Going backwards though. Going forward. So 92. Yeah. So the earliest that's an early date that we know that it has to be after that. Now, how late can it be? Well, he brought us the text from the Mishnah, which is codified around 200 CE. So from 90 CE to 200 CE is, I'm assuming, the window during which you're going to argue it had to have happened, because the Mishnah already knows about it in 200, and Josephus doesn't in 90. So between 90 and 200 is the window where the crime happened. Did I get that right?
Perfect. Okay. So I think you wanted to ask if 600 years or so. So yes, what we have seen is during the time of the Second Temple, several hundred years, there was no fast at the time. We don't have a video footage of all Jews and all that period, but the evidence speaks for itself. Josephus would definitely have known. He was a priest at the temple. He gives us at length describes the different holidays the Jews kept. So he's a very good source for this. And in general, I recommend you read War of the Jews. It's terrific. I myself have once a week, I put a video, which is a chapter from the book, going over it. We finished book 1 recently and going into book 2, which is the better part. It's the part where the actual war takes place. There's more action. It's the more interesting part. Okay. No part is really good in the story. It's a sad story. We know how it ends. Okay. So he's just a very talented writer. We're very fortunate that this man had the talent and the time to sit down and describe the history of the Jews and the war that he saw, because he's our only source for the war. Had he not written that book, we would know nothing about it, and we have so much vivid detail from a person who may have lied here and there. There's some exaggerations, things that probably didn't happen. But without him, we would know nothing. So the temple disappeared, and we'd have like a line here from the rabbis talking about some stuff they heard from hundreds of years ago. So it's a terrific book. Check it out. Okay. So we're talking about 200 and the Mishnah has it. So it's before that. And we could make the argument that it was invented at the year 200. That's a possibility, right? With Rabbi Judah the Prince setting out to write the Mishnah, he might have written that down. But we have a source that says that here this is source 9, in the Jerusalem Talmud, Rabbi, which is Rabbi Judah the Prince, will be Udanasi, he sought to approve the 9th of Av, and they did not let him. In other words, he would have invented something he was against. So it must have been before that. So we're talking about at least before Rabbi Judah the Prince is codifying the Mishnah. Upshot of all this, it happened during the 2nd century. Okay, so we know we're looking for somebody in the 2nd century. Okay, so the answer is actually in plain sight, and I didn't have to do all this thing because we have, I think, a smoking gun that was sitting there the whole time in the Jerusalem Talmud telling us exactly who did it. And honestly, I don't know how I missed it when I wrote that article that said the wrong thing, and I don't know how not everyone noticed it. It's just sitting right there in the Jerusalem Talmud. So we have Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, famous rabbi and a student of Rabbi Akiva. Okay, and then he writes in his words, he says, Akiva, my teacher, would expound. The word is darash, used midrash. Thus said the Lord of hosts, the fast of the 4th, and the fast of the 5th, and the fast of the 7th, and the fast of the 10th shall be for the house of Israel joy and gladness. So he's quoting another verse from Zechariah, and he's saying, my teacher, he expounded on that verse, and his conclusions from that verse are, the fast of the 4th, this is the 7th of Tammuz. The fast of the 5th, this is the 9th of Av, on which the temple was destroyed the first time and the second time. The fast of the 7th, this is the 3rd of Tishrei, on which Gedaliah, son of Achikam, was killed. The fast of the 10th, this is the 10th of Tevet. This is the same verse we said that appears in the Mishnah, which is the source of this. In other words, in the Yerushalmi, we're not just given that part from the Mishnah, we're also told who said it. And who said it is quoted Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and he says that his teacher expounded on this verse in Zechariah. So we have the whole source laid out to us. Had this been a fast before Rabbi Akiva, then Rabbi Akiva wouldn't have to expound, wouldn't have to do darash, he wouldn't do midrash. Also, he probably wouldn't have to teach at all, because everyone was fasting. Why would Rabbi Akiva need to teach his students about something everyone's doing forever? No, he knew that his teacher used midrash, and he knew on what verse he used midrash. He used that verse in Zechariah, saying that those days, those are for, we'll go into it more detail if we want to know. But the upshot of this is that it was Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva decided on those days, and he did it using midrash, and we have the account of his student that he did it. And so we've solved that crime. And if you want to say, okay, based on one word, I don't know, maybe it wasn't what it is. I have another supporting evidence. This is from the Tosefta, so a little after the Mishnah.
Okay, wait. I'm confused.
Okay, yeah. This is not an easy one. I agree.
Right. Okay. So Shimon Bar Yochai, we already looked at him saying stuff about about what? What did we already see Shimon Bar Yochai talk about?
I think this is the first we discussed.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
So Shimon Bar Yochai is saying, my teacher Rabbi Akiva took this verse from Zechariah, right? Mm-hmm. And made a drash on it, meaning this is what it actually means, what the verse actually means. The fast of the 4th that Akiva finds quoted by Zechariah is actually happens on the 17th of Tammuz.
Yeah.
So why is it called the 4th?
Oh, the 4th month. Okay, so the Bible doesn't use the names of the month that we are used to. So Av is the 5th month. It's counting from Nisan, from Passover. So from the spring. It's a different calendar, but it's the same month. So every time it says, we're looking at the 5th month, and we'll also look at the 7th month. So that's Tishrei. Those are some Shabbat and also some Daliyah. But it gives all 4, because the problem is that Zechariah mentions 4 fasts, and those are our 4 fasts. He tells us which month they are in. So we know the month. The problem is, what's missing is he doesn't tell us what day of the month it is. So we know that during the exile, the one that that delegation came, we started with, they had a fast during the month of Av and another one during the month of Tishrei. The same months, but they don't tell us there. It's missing what day of the month. So when Rabbi Akiva expounds, he's filling in those details. He's telling us what those dates are inside the month. He's using the same month that the Zechariah.
So when you fasted, source 8, when you fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7th month, these 70 years. You see that in text 8?
Yes.
So what Elon is saying is that the 5th and the 7th month, already in Zechariah, we see that there's been fasting in those 2 months, the 5th month and the 7th month, but we don't know what date of the month.
Right. But
Those fasts happened on.
And those two fasts are, the 5th is Av and the 7th is Tishrei?
Correct.
Exactly.
The 5th month is Av, and the 7th month is the month of Tishrei.
Somewhat puzzlingly, here in this question, there are only 2. But after, in Zechariah's response, he answers about 4. So it is the 4. But,
And what's in the 4th month? What's the 4th month?
so there's Tammuz and the one.
Isn't Yom Kippur missing?
Yom Kippur was a different kind of fast.
I see.
That's already that's from the Torah. That's unrelated to these 4 fasts that are related to the temple. Now, it's puzzling. We don't know why they decided on those 4 months. We don't know of any event in Tishrei having to do with the destruction of the temple. So why these people in Babylonia fasted, we don't know.
So
Rabbi Akiva knows. He gives us the answer. And we do it from Dalia, but that's only Rabbi Akiva. That's not from before them.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So sitting here the whole time, and obviously I missed. Rabbi Akiva solved exactly 90 years.
Well,
that he solved.
okay, no. I solved that it was Rabbi Akiva, which is between those 2 dates. So we finished the mystery part on that. We found the person. The person who did it was Rabbi Akiva. He's living towards the end of that century. So
He's saying that
he's establishing the fast. He's saying we should now fast on those days. Okay, and he's telling us why we fast on those days. Now, in his mind, he's recreating the fast that were already in Zechariah. Now, when we read Zechariah, we don't see any dates, and we don't see the reasons for the fasting. It's like completely obtuse to us. But Rabbi Akiva is not a regular person. Rabbi Akiva is the greatest rabbi of his generation. He has, this is a segue, but maybe to understand who Rabbi Akiva is, it's worth talking about it. There's a story, a very famous story in the Talmud, that tells us about Moses. And Moses is talking with God and the mountain, Mount Sinai. And he's like, why is it taking so long to write the Torah? Hurry up. Let's get out of here. And God answers. He says, you see these little lines on the top of the letter Shin here? One day in the distant future, there will be a great sage named Akiva, who, based on those little lines, every little part of the text, he will expound halakha, like piles and piles of halachot. He has
of Jewish law.
Of Jewish law. He'll have such insight that every little thing inside the Bible he'll be able to extrapolate from that the laws. Moses says, "Oh, please do show it to me." And God tells him to turn around. He turns around, and then suddenly he's in Rabbi Akiva's Beit Midrash.
Wow.
Where they're studying. Rabbi Akiva is teaching. Yeah, it's like
Wow.
a time machine. He goes, it's some time traveling there. So Moses suddenly appears in the Beit Midrash, and he sits in the back, and he's watching as Rabbi Akiva is expounding to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his other students. And the Talmud tells us that Rabbi Akiva, that Moses gets sad. He hears them talking, and he doesn't understand anything. He's like he doesn't understand what they're discussing.
What do you mean don't see the kid in its mother's milk means no cheeseburgers? I don't understand. This makes no sense.
It's completely beyond Moses' his understanding, and this makes him sad. And then suddenly this changes when one of the students raises his hand, and Rabbi Akiva says, "Rabbi, what do you mean? It means that. How do you know? How do you know?" And Rabbi Akiva answers, "Zot Torah leMoshe b'Sinai." This is the Torah that Moses got himself. And then Moses is reassured. Okay. So I don't understand anything, but it's still my Torah, so it's okay. And he goes over and then he asks, okay, so can you show me what happens with the happy ending of Rabbi Akiva? How great he does for being such a great sage. And he turns around and travels a little more into the future, and he sees Rabbi Akiva's death, which is horrible. He's a martyr. He's a martyr. He's tortured to death and is killed. And, so it's a sad story. And then Moses asks God, why are you doing this? What's the point of this? And God says, basically, shut up. That's what I decided. That's the answer that God gives to Moses. And then, so we have to
I thought God was going to say, just be glad you're being so.
Yeah. He got it.
Exactly. You just died on the mountain, right?
Where was it? What part of the world
was Rabbi Akiva killed? In Israel.
In Israel.
Yeah. This was during Adrian's.
The Hadrianic persecution.
After Bar revolt. He was a martyr of that period.
Akiva supported the Bar Kokhba.
Okay, so what we understand from this, the rabbis already had an understanding that Moses would not understand their laws, that their laws are a departure from. And a lot of this is based on Midrash. Midrash is really the tool that let them extrapolate from the text that we can read into these laws. And us mere mortals can't do this extrapolation. We can't read a verse in the Bible and say, you know what, I think because of this, the letter Yud repeats twice, I think it means that we can actually eat cheeseburgers. So even great rabbis today, like, the greatest rabbi, Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox rabbi, would not imagine of doing that, because they believe that kind of insight and genius was something unique to that generation, and in particular to Rabbi Akiva.
Yeah, yet they claim when they get to a halachic answer, it is Torah Misi. Then it is the Torah that came through Moshe, right? That's what I love about our tradition.
They use a different method. They will not go to the Torah. The way they extrapolate halakha is by comparing and contrasting already in the Talmud, which is based on the Mishnah, which is based on this Midrash done by Rabbi Akiva and his students. Okay, so all this, everything's based on Moses, then everything's based on Rabbi Akiva and his students, and then everything is based on later rabbis extrapolating from what the rabbis extrapolated from what Rabbi Akiva and his students extrapolated from the text that Moses.
Amen.
So it's a tower, and the tower is built from different kinds of reasoning. There's development in there. Okay, so now we're going to try. We still have the same problem. Okay, so we know it's Rabbi Akiva based on what his students said, and also I didn't give the extra evidence for this being the case. So in the Tosefta, this is your source 11, Tosefta Ta'anit 2a. Maybe the Tosefta is a collection of traditions that did not make their way into the Mishnah, but were collected alongside the Mishnah. So it's like an addendum to the Mishnah. And there we find the rabbis, not just any rabbis, the students of Rabbi Akiva, and they're arguing what to do when Tisha B'Av comes out on Saturday. And they're arguing about the most basic rules of what to do. What we learn from this is, for them, this was the first time it happened. Rabbi Akiva established Tisha B'Av, but he didn't tell them what happened when it falls on Shabbat. Then he died, horrible death, and then a few years later, it couldn't be that long. Our calendar, like every few years, any holiday will come out on Shabbat. It happens, and they need to decide what to do.
Can we fast?
Can we fast? Do we fast at different times? They discuss the different options, and each one has a different idea, which means it had to have happened quite recent. At the generation of the students, it was a new phenomenon because it hadn't already been settled what to do when it's in the Shabbat. What?
It doesn't happen on Shabbat.
It hasn't on Shabbat yet, which is, I think, strong evidence that indeed when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai tells us it's his teacher created it, this is in fact what happened. Okay, so in my case, that's a case closed. Rabbi Akiva did, but so this is already very cool. I believe I'm the first to say that. I'm very satisfied by that. But we're still missing something. I still want to know why he decided on that, because it still doesn't make sense. It's like Rabbi Akiva knew the Torah very well. He knew the Book of Kings very well. He knew Jeremiah very well. He knew when the Bible says that it was destroyed. Why would he decide on the 9th of that? So that's what we're going to do next.
It falls on Shabbat.
Yeah, I don't.
You're killing us here.
I honestly, I don't remember.
It falls on Shabbat. It says you have like an eggs with.
But it goes on. It's long. I didn't give you the whole thing.
Well,
There's a Torah class for you for next week. And I'd love to know. Like I just didn't. It wasn't a part of the mystery I needed to solve. So I'm less concerned with what the halakha is. That's there's many people write about that. And if I want to know the halakha, you don't look at the Talmud. You look at the Shulchan Aruch or later compilations. There's already that. I'm interested in the people who made halakha, people who made the decisions. I want to know the history. I'm looking for a real world thing. If we have a tradition, somebody created it. It was people who created it. I want to know who. That's what I'm looking for. Yes.
And he was part of the
Apparently,
revolt.
yeah. Part of the revolt.
And they were crushing the rebellion. And you can look at his video on the 2,000 that were crucified in response to the Jews.
It happens.
2,000. Yeah, it happens.
The Romans were very cruel. Like they weren't unusually cruel to the Jews. When the Romans came to a city, if the city did not surrender, they would kill or sell into slavery everyone. This happened to many, many people. We are unique in the fact that we had a resistance that was quite strong. It was a big resistance. There were a lot of Jews. It wasn't just a city. And the fact that we survived. Many, many peoples, when they encountered the Romans, if they didn't surrender right away, which many did, that was the smart thing to do, they're just gone. There's nobody to tell their story. There was no Josephus to write about them. They don't have any ancestors to fast on the day that it happened. So they're gone. They had their own stories, and it's sad that we lost them. Their stories aren't told. We are fortunate that we're still here. I think it's a theme of Jewish history. We're just really happy to still be around.
And one of the articles I didn't share was my group when we were talking about the 9th Bob that I read that I found, or maybe it's in the source sheet with the podcast, but we didn't cover it in class, was this whole discussion of how wonderful it is that we fast for something that happened 2,000 years. Because for most peoples, if they fell to the Romans 2,000 years ago, there is no commemoration. There is no fast because there's nobody left to tell that story and to remember. Like they're obliterated. They're gone. And that what an amazing thing that we are a people who fasts for an event that happened to us 2,000 years ago. Like we are fasting for Jerusalem and the temple 2,000 years later. What an incredible thing that is.
So it's also kind of stunning that 2,000 Jews got crucified and they made a tzimmus where one got across.
Yeah.
It's
right.
Jewish survivors.
Which is something I gently say to Christians, every night. It's like, the Romans crucified hundreds of thousands of people, including Jews. Tens of thousands of Jews were crucified. Jesus
he was
one of them.
Just one.
Just one. Yeah. And that we did plan to discuss it, but Josephus again, he described the period before the destruction of the temple, and in general he blamed it on Jewish messianism. They were like a bunch. He gives a whole list of messianic contestants, people who claim to be the Messiah, come up to Jerusalem. Well, no, this is before Bar Kokhba. These are people that we don't nobody talks about. There's a mysterious Egyptian that had tens of thousands of people that came to Jerusalem, and he said that the walls will fall, and he lists a whole litany of people claiming to be the Messiah. Doesn't mention Jesus. He didn't even make the list. He had
a good PR team later on.
Yeah, exactly.
I heard your YouTube on Paul.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, we didn't plan to talk about Christianity, but to say Jesus did not establish Christianity. A rabbi, Rabbi Saul, he established what Christianity would be based on these stories about Jesus many years after it was gone. never met him, and that's where Christianity really started. But that's distracting from our own. They have their own great story, but ours is honestly a lot better. So one of the best things in Judaism, I think, and perhaps the best proof for the existence of God, in my opinion, is the fact that the Jewish story is so good. It's like it couldn't be random how we happen to be in the nexuses of history. We're part of Julius Caesar's story, a part of American Revolution. We appear everywhere in we have a really good story, and that nobody has anything that comes close to that. There's no people like the French history. Okay, so there's this king and he takes over that. It doesn't go as long as us, and it's okay. I love it. Roman history is terrific. This is Roman history podcast, but it's only a short period. We have a really good story, and I could imagine our world being for a divine creator, some kind of Netflix show that he watches. It's a really good story.
Let's put a great subplot in the whole universal human story. It's called the Jews.
I can see everything being formed around. We just have a terrific story.
All right, we have 2 hands raised, so you decide when you want to take.
Oh, I'm happy to. I want to answer the question of why Rabbi Akiva did what he did, because it's Rabbi Akiva made a lot of decisions, so it's a way to understand where our Jewish law comes from. In general, but I'm happy to answer any questions, because I want everyone to be on footing here before we move on, because it gets a little more complicated, because we're trying to replicate what Rabbi Akiva was saying. So, who has questions? That looks like Bert's.
Okay, yeah. A completely modern take having nothing to do with scholarship and nothing to do with anything that I know about any of this, okay? I think that there's a great advantage to having all of these grouped into one day, regardless of whether that's historically accurate. I mean, Tisha B'Av is the Oy Vey holiday. And if we had a fast for every horrible thing that ever happened to the Jews over history, we'd all be getting a lot thinner, because there'd be a lot of different fast days. So one of the psychological advantages to having these all put together, whether that is scripturally correct or not, is that we take a day. I mean, let me go back a second. Judaism is, in fact, overwhelmingly positive. We do posit that in the end, everything's going to be okay. And so one of the advantages of putting them all in one day is we do it, it's over, now let's go and make tomorrow let's make a better world.
Okay, I agree, but I'm still wondering on why that particular day. I know it's a petty, it doesn't matter, right? It could have been the 15th of Tammuz, and it would have served the same purpose. Right? I think you agree. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah, for historical, right. I mean, whatever it was, there is an advantage to doing it all in one day and being done with it, so that we don't stew.
The date is trivial. It doesn't really matter.
We could, if we were going to stew on every horrible thing that ever happened to the Jews. Take out your calendars, folks.
But also, I mean, to have one day that the Jews act in communal line, that we all agree that this is the day, and every Jew in the world acknowledges.
What we're skipping is that there's actually 4 days. Rabbi Akiva decided 4, and we just we don't bother with the other ones. Because you're right, it is too much to do it 4 times a year.
So is the fast one of those days?
Yeah, one of the 4 fast days. People fast on the day after Rosh Hashanah. Okay, I'm okay.
All right, Susan and Rachel.
Go ahead.
Just as for a modern take on that period in Rome, I just want to reference the life of Brian.
You what?
Monty Python, the life of Brian.
Okay.
It's the shoe, it's the gourd.
Probably the best historic depiction of Palestine in that period. They get things really, really correctly. I don't know how. They have good researchers, but I think it's a really, really good depiction of what it was like during that period. The different groups squabbling amongst themselves. That is exactly what took place. It's really accurate. It's amazing.
Rachel.
So I'm a little bit hung up on something that you said early on when you said that there seemed to be, or one of the writings suggested that the purpose of maybe I got this wrong, the purpose of the fast was to, like, why would you fast? You would do this to get God, to implore God, like for God's intercession, almost like to have God rebuild the temple.
Yeah.
That, and it seems like, but in the case of Yom Kippur, we're fasting as a way to, as a way to, I don't know, to atone for, that's part of our, making ourselves, ready to to atone. And I know there is like from A to B, there's a connection, but it seems like there's a difference there. And I almost feel like in the case of, like, if you're fasting to implore your God to intercede, that almost feels pagan to me. Forgive me. That's a little pagan. That's a little bit like, hey, Apollo, look, I kind of want to win this war here. What can you do for me?
Okay, so
can you maybe talk? Did I get this wrong? Can you talk a little bit more about, or what did I miss?
Okay, I don't think you missed anything. It seems pagan because honestly, it is somewhat pagan. Like the idea that a human could change God's mind about things. It sounds a little strange, but it would have been common in the ancient world, and these are people from the ancient world. It's not the first thing that we can read into the Jewish history that seems pagan. There's, burning animals on an altar in a temple. That seems more pagan to me, and that was normal Tuesday for many, many years. And again, we're hoping that this happens again. This is what the reason we're fasting is, so once again we can burn animals on that hill in Jerusalem. So
not all of us, but yes, apparently.
But the conversation, right, among the texts here is about fasting on the night of Av so that the temple will be rebuilt, so that we can again make.
And that might seem crazy, but it actually. Right? They fasted, those group during the exile, they fasted 70 years and they wanted to stop. Why? Because the temple was being rebuilt. So it was not the first time. There's no reason after the temple gets destroyed again. This is Rabbi Akiva's generation. If it worked the first time, you want to replicate it because it worked. So it's going to work again. They believe, and we'll get to that at the end of this talk, that this will work. We're not going to fast forever for 2,000 years. That's crazy. We'll fast a few years. The first time it was 70 years. Okay? So 70 years we'll fast and God will relent and our temple will be rebuilt. And until the next time, we'll stop fasting. Okay? Maybe we can even bring that up now. It doesn't have to be at the end. It says the end of the Mishnah on Ta'anit, which discusses exactly Tisha B'Av, says, this would be...
Are you at 17 or no?
I'm skipping ahead. I don't even know if I put it in here because there's a lot we're not going to get into. Okay, I don't think I put it on. It says in the end of Mishnah Ta'anit, that's what it ends on. This is the section talking about Tisha B'Av, that the days of fasting will become days of joy and gladness. Okay, we're getting to that in a second. That's the source of. So that's what we're hoping will happen. That we're not going to fast forever. This is not commemorating. If it was commemorating, we would commemorate forever. This is trying to fix what is broken. That's the attempt. And regarding the difference with Tisha B'Av, with Yom Kippur, you're right. It is a different thing. They're not the same. In rabbinic language, Yom Kippur is not a ta'anit. It's a different kind of fast. That being said, there are some similarities, right? You are fasting because you're hoping that God forgives you for your transgressions, that He won't kill you this year. So there's some of that there too. It's different, but it's not entirely different. It's also that same idea in the background. Is there anyone else?
Well, it's like saying a birthday party is completely different from an anniversary party. Yeah. It's like they're both parties commemorate, but they're different. They're different. flavors.
Okay. I don't see any hands raised, so let's see why Rabbi Akiva got the date right. They're
Everyone's
wrong.
getting his exercises.
Okay.
Not that he got it wrong, but he did it.
Why you decided on what to? I think we all agreed that it seemed like the wrong decision.
I have to see it.
Oh, okay, yeah. Maybe he'll convince you that it was the right thing. Correct. Okay. Ostensibly, it seemed like the wrong thing. And Rabbi Yochanan, who was also a great rabbi, agreed that he's saying that it's not the right thing. It's not just Elon said. Okay, so let me see where we are in the pages because we're going to continue reading. Okay, so this is section 4, why the 10th? So why the 9th? And source 12 is Jeremiah 41, 1 and 2. So what we're going to talk about now is, first we're going to discuss the fast of Gedalia. You see number 12?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So before I discuss the 9th of Av, I want us to discuss one of the other 4, a minor one, the fast of Gedalia, that's the 3rd of Tishrei. And the tradition is that we're fasting because Gedalia, who was, this is after the destruction of the first temple. The Babylonians appoint a Jew to be like the representative, the governor in the area. And then another Jew comes and kills him. Okay? So, this is an odd reason for us to be fasting 2,000 years later. And this is on the same list as Rabbi Akiva. So we also know that Rabbi Akiva made this strange decision. So first we'll solve some Gedalia, and from there we can see the mechanism, and we can see it also work on the 9th of Av. So that's why we're doing it, because I know it's less interesting than Tisha B'Av. So I just want you to know why we're doing it, so we can see the mechanism work across. It works across all 4, but that would do it. Okay.
Not for this class.
Not for any class. I don't want to waste your time. 2 examples is more than... Okay, so basically, it says, in the 7th month, Ishmael, son of Netanyah, came to Gedalia, son of Achikam, at Mitzvah, and there they ate bread together. Then Ishmael, the 10 men with him, rose and struck down Gedalia with the sword and killed him. Okay? So that is the reason that this fast was established by Rabbi Akiva, the event. But you notice something here? There's no date. It only says in the 7th month. Again, that's Tishrei. So when Rabbi Akiva established it, he didn't only have to pin it to this event, he also had to decide on the 3rd of Tishrei. So first about the pinning it on Gedalia. So on some Gedalia. So he had the Bible in front of him, same Bible as we have. And he could read, Rabbi Akiva. And he could read through the Bible and look for events, because he knew that at the time of Zechariah, they were fasting, or until the time of Zechariah. So he knew there was a reason, there must be a reason that they chose to fast on the month of Tishrei. So he looked through the Bible and looked for events that happened in Tishrei that could have been the reason. Now there's quite a bit of events that take place in Tishrei, but a lot of them happen on Sukkot. Sukkot could have been a fast day, so those are excluded. There's events that happen on Yom Kippur, the 10th of Tishrei, but obviously they couldn't.
Already a fast day.
It's already a fast day. They couldn't have been that. And the same thing with Rosh Hashanah. Obviously, it wasn't a fast day during Rosh Hashanah. Yom Tov, you aren't allowed to fast. So those are excluded. So looking around for events, and there's other events. There's events that you couldn't imagine that they would be for fast. For example, there's a false prophet during the time of Jeremiah, and he's killed during the month of Tishrei. But obviously,
so that's a good thing.
It's a good thing. Nobody would have established a fast based on that. So if you go through all the events, and I did that, you just, it's like a search engine. You put in Tishrei or the something month, and you look through it, and you can read all the events that happened during that month. It's not that much. I don't know. I spent an afternoon on that. Went over all of them, and really, if you do that, the only real event you can conceive of a fast taking place is this death of Gedalia. So he didn't have a search engine. Presumably, he knew the whole Bible by heart, or if he didn't, I don't know how he did it.
They had people who did.
Yeah, he did the same thing. And this is the event that he found. And if you try it yourself, you'll find that that's the only event that could make sense. So that's how he decided on that event. Okay. Now the question is, how did he decide it's on the 3rd of Tishrei? Because the text doesn't say; it just says the month of Tishrei. So this is the crux of what we're trying to do. This is, I think, my great discovery. Okay? Remember the verse that he said, that he's quoting, that the Rabbi Akiva Darash? That's what we're reading next. That's 13. This is the crux of the matter. So, this is a prophecy by Zechariah. And he says, thus says the Lord of hosts, the fast of the 4th month, the fast of the 5th, the fast of the 7th, the fast of the 10th shall become for the house of Judah occasions of joy and gladness, happy festivals, but love, truth, and peace. So that's the prophecy that Zechariah gave. We know from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai that Rabbi Akiva read this and he came up with the dates. Now, you read through it and you don't see any dates here, only the month. So what did he do here? This is the Rabbi Akiva's great genius, okay? We know that Zechariah is a true prophet. This is a fact. It's in the Bible. If he's a true prophet, his prophecies come true. If they didn't come true,
He's not a true prophet.
well, he's not a true prophet. And we already know, it's an axiom that Zechariah is a true prophet. So any prophecy he made came true. Now, since he's prophesying here that those 4 fast days became occasions of joy and gladness, happy festivals, then the dates that those fasts happened had to be days of joy and gladness. So if he finds days of joy and gladness during those particular months, those days of joy and gladness must be the dates of the fast. Okay, you see the logic? It's very logical. It's not how you and me would have thought about it, but it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so that's what he used. Now, he decided on the 3rd of Tishrei, so what would we expect? It's the day of joy and gladness. And in fact, it is. We have something called Megillat Ta'anit. Megillat Ta'anit, ironically, it's a list of holidays, not days of Ta'anit, not days of fasting, because it's a list of days you aren't allowed to fast on. So remember, you fast for all kinds of reasons. The ship, no rain, like there's a bunch of reasons communities or people can decide on a fast. Even your son is sick and if you're King David. So, but you can't just fast on any day. You can't fast on Rosh Hashanah. So in addition to those days that are obvious, like the holidays, the rabbis created, this is even before the rabbis, we have a list from the Second Temple period, the late second, maybe the year 50, thereabouts. And it's a list of dates that you aren't allowed to fast, called Megillat Ta'anit. And to that list, maybe 100 years later, maybe 200 years later, we have like a addendum that explains what those dates are, like why those dates are chosen. So it's based on the date. It goes like according to the calendar, starting at Tishrei, and you can read what the dates of you weren't allowed to fast, which were days of joy and gladness. For example, Hanukkah is there. That's on the list. The day that Vespasian died. That's on the list. So there's a lot of reasons to be happy. Okay? But in Tishrei, there's actually very few days. Because it's already a holiday. We know this. The month of Tishrei is already full of holidays, so you can't really add anything there. There's not a lot of room. But on that month of Tishrei, the 3rd of Tishrei is on the list. It's a day of joy and gladness. Why? The Scholion, that's what it's called, the addendum, it explains there used to be a format for writing dates on official documents. And that format, the Greeks made us, have God mentioned. It had we don't know exactly what the format was, but it mentioned God. And this made early rabbis, predecessors to the rabbis, angry. Because what happened is people wrote documents and then they threw it in the garbage and then the name of God was in the garbage. So they wanted a format that doesn't mention it. And at some period, on the 3rd of Tishrei, officially they changed the date writing system so it doesn't mention God. And that was so important to them that they established it as a day of joy and gladness. It says in the Scholion, it doesn't say joy and gladness, but it says, and made that day a festival. Okay? So Rabbi Akiva would have been aware of this. So this is the only date on that list that is available to be that day of joy of gladness. So that means that is the day that would have to be the fast day. So using that logic, he reconstructed. Zechariah only gives us the month. But through this logic, he was able to reconstruct and find out that it must have been on the 3rd. If you believe that, Zechariah really would predict the future and had to predict the future, right? There's a lot of things that a modern logician wouldn't have taken for granted. But for Rabbi Akiva, that would be the only day. So that's how he decided it.
So a day when we're not allowed to fast, maybe a day when you
Exactly. Okay? Because it started out, originally it was a fast day. during the time of the exile. It became, as Zechariah promised, a day of joy and gladness because of that format of the dates. And then Rabbi Akiva turned it back, switched it over to make it again a fast day. And to this day, it's a fast day. Okay? So now we know why.
But we still don't have the mystery solved because it's the third.
Okay, yeah. So now we have the mechanism.
We're on the third of Tishrei.
Right.
So we have the mechanism.
That's the mechanism.
Right, so that's the mechanism.
And now we can go over and see
Do the same thing.
do the same thing with Tisha B'Av. So source 15 gives us, again, Josephus in the War. And he tells us, the festival of the bringing of wood, on which it was the custom for all to bring wood to the altar, so that fuel for the fire should never be lacking. For the fire burns always without cease. He doesn't give us the date. There was this festival, he tells us. Based on where it is in the story, we can surmise that he's talking about the summer, but no date, okay? But we have our trusted Megillat Ta'anit. And Megillat Ta'anit says, on the 15th day of Av, at the time of the wood of the priest, not to eulogize. And then in the Scholion, that later addition that explains, it says, because when the exile first came up, they instituted for them the day of the 9th of Av, that they should bring on it the wood of offering. The sages said, when the exiles come up tomorrow, they too will need. So they instituted for them the 15th of Av. So this already tells us that the 9th of Av was a day of wood offering, which is a day of, you are not allowed to fast on, a day of joy and gladness. Again, if you look at the rest of the month of Av, you won't find others of these. So that makes it the most likely source. Now, okay, Megillat Ta'anit and this Scholion, we don't know this. Like, why would we trust that? But we have it in the Mishnah itself. In Mishnah Ta'anit 4:5. If you open your Mishnahs now, or your Talmuds, and look there, you will see it says, Zman Atzei Kohanim V'Am. So it says the time of the wood of the priest and the people are 9. But there's a problem with the grammar here that makes us think that there might be some kind of mistake. Because Zman is singular, so why is it 9? It doesn't make sense grammatically. It looks like there's a problem. And indeed, if you look at the Kaufman manuscript of the Mishnah, which is our best manuscript, it is closest to the original that we have.
So let me just elucidate the problem. Zman atzei kohanim va'am tisha. The time, the zman, he's saying, is singular. The time is 9, says the Hebrew. You could think 9 days. Because zman, tisha, 9 is modifying the word zman, time. So if it's, the time is 9, but it's 1 day.
Right there in the Mishnah, it says that there are 9 of them. But it grammatically, it doesn't work.
Right.
Okay? But it gets better if you read the better version, which is the Kaufman manuscript, which always worth opening it up. It's available online. And it preserves a more ancient, more accurate depiction of the Mishnah. What happened is that the Mishnah that we have now is the Mishnah that was carried over by the Babylonian Talmud. And that was preserved less well than this Eretz Israel tradition that made its way to Italy when it was written in the...
So there are 2 Talmuds, the Babylonian Talmud and the Palestinian Talmud, the Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud. And so the Jerusalem text stayed in Israel. Mm-hmm. The Babylonian Talmud obviously went from Israel to Babylonia and then, did its thing. So what he's saying...
So it has primacy. When we go to print, we are using the tradition that came from Babylonia.
Right.
So the Babylonian Talmud is important and the Jerusalem Talmud isn't important. But we got some traditions that came from Israel and went into Italy. Italy was closer to the rabbis of Palestine in the Galilee. And they got some traditions, and it happens to be that they preserved the text of Mishnah better. Okay? This, not me saying, scholars have done this, and the Kaufman Institute is by far our most ancient picture of what the Mishnah was originally. And there it says, Zman Atzei Kohanim V'Am Betisha, on the 9th. So, and if we look at the equivalent in the Tosefta, we have the same text, and there it's original like it was original. It says, Man Atzei HaKohanim V'Am Betisha B'Av. Now, if you just think about the fact that even the Samaritan Pentateuch, this festival of the wood offering, what is it doing in Ta'anit? It doesn't belong. It doesn't have to do with these self-inflicted fast days. The only reason they even mention it in the Mishnah is because it's the ninth of Av, which is the source of Tisha B'Av. But later rabbis, people who memorized this whole thing, they didn't know all of this. So for them, it got corrupted because they didn't understand. And they even felt uncomfortable with the ninth of Av being a festival. So that sort of receded from memory because another thing that people don't realize is that the Mishnah was memorized. It wasn't written down. It was memorized for generations before it was written down. So if you've ever played a broken telephone, you know that it works, but there's some problems. The text might change over time. So we know that happened. Okay, so basically the same thing happened. Rabbi Akiva knew that this was the festival. Because he knew it was the festival, he could recreate that was the fast day. And he created Tisha B'Av and the other fast. And what was he thinking by doing that? He was hoping, and this is where the Mishnah ends, that those days will once again become days of joy and gladness. And we're still waiting for these days to be joy and gladness. How will they become joy and gladness? The temple will be built. Somebody will send, maybe from LA, they'll send a delegation to Jerusalem, ask some prophet in the gates of the city, okay, we have a new temple. Do we stop fasting on, and that prophet, whoever he may be, somewhere in the future will say yes. And that's it. It won't be a fast anymore. And I don't know if at that time they will become festivals, because we might have to wait for something happy to happen, like the changing of the way we write documents. That's far in the future, so we don't know. I think I'm out of time, am I not? But,
Go ahead.
Okay, because I prepared a whole the same equivalent of talk about what Mishnah is and who wrote it. But I think this is a good place to stop. I knew this. I just wanted to have it.
It's better. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to have more than less. But I'm happy to answer any questions. If you ask me about who wrote the Mishnah, I'll answer that briefly too.
Okay.
Any questions?
When was the Mishnah coded?
Okay. Terrific question. Thank you, friends. Okay, so this is already not in disputed territory. There's no mystery here. It's the tradition, and I agree with it. It's borne out. Academics agree with it. Ultra-Orthodox rabbi agree with it. It was happened about the year 200, and it was Rabbi Judah, the prince, who codified it. So the tradition says, there were, at the time when this happened, already nobody had seen the temple. The traditions were already beginning to fade, and they needed to be preserved and codified. So Rabbi Judah the Prince, who was a great rabbi and a wealthy man, he assembled the greatest minds of his generation, weirdos who were preserving different traditions about how the temple was at the time. So you have to imagine these are people, nerds who've never been to the temple, never seen it, couldn't even go to Jerusalem, and they learned from their teachers how the priests were supposed to cut the calf that they were burning, at minutia about the day-to-day workings of the temple, and they preserved it from generation to generation. And Rabbi Judah the Prince assembled them and wrote the Mishnah, but he didn't write because we can't have our secret in house. The Goyim might come and steal it. These are secret Jewish treasures. So what he established is Tanaim. Tana is the Aramaic equivalent of Shana. Mishnah is something that you recite. Tana, the early rabbis, are reciters. These are people that their job was to memorize the text of the Mishnah. And then once they have memorized it, they are ordained, and they can go out, find a student his job will be to memorize the Mishnah. Then his task is to find a student who will once again, memorize the Mishnah, and that's how it passed from generation to generation. What's amazing about this process is that is the origin of rabbis. Your smicha is at the end of that line. So it's true, we don't memorize the Mishnah anymore. The memorizing of the Mishnah only lasted for hundreds of years. But these people, while they were memorizing the Mishnah, they were also memorizing what the different rabbis, their teachers were saying about it. And that eventually became too big. You can't memorize also this whole massive text and all the traditions, what the different rabbis and different generations were saying. And then those traditions together with the text of the Mishnah. So the traditions about the text and the text became the Babylonian Talmud, the Jerusalem Talmud. Oh. That is the core of the.
So you're saying Judah didn't write down.
He didn't write it. He
transmitted it down.
Exactly. He built a mechanism for memorizing because you can't have it written. Eventually, we gave up on that, so it was written down.
So the Mishnah and the Gemara, so the Mishnah and then the arguments and discussions around those laws together are the Talmud.
Mm-hmm. And at that point, it was already written down. It's massive. You can't find people.
You've seen a set of Talmud.
Yeah. And maybe I'll say something about who these people that Rabbi Judah the Prince assembled are. And that will also teach us something about what we just discussed with the ninth of Av. Because you might wonder, okay, so Rabbi Akiva decided on the ninth of Av. Like, who asked Rabbi Akiva? Like, why is this one man deciding for all of us for 2,000 years? Like, what wasn't there Rabbi Mike that said that it should be on the 10th? So, if you go and read through the Mishnah it's not the Talmud. It's manageable. You could, in a day, I think, read the whole thing. In less than a day. It's not that big. The Mishnah is short. Really? Yeah, but it's manageable. You won't find it very interesting. It's about minutiae in the temple, but it's definitely doable. There's about 100, a little more than 100 rabbis mentioned in the Mishnah, but they're not equally distributed. Most of them, or many of them, are mentioned only once. This rabbi, he said something. He's just quoted, and that's it. That's the last time we hear of him. And then there's some rabbis that are mentioned on every page, like in any debate they're talking. So if you take this list of the top 7, and these are by far the most mentioned in the Mishnah, which means these are the people that the Mishnah is based on what they said. Once again, about what's happening in the temple. So this is the list, 1 to 7. Most mentioned, Rabbi Yehuda. Second, Rabbi Meir. Third, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Fourth, Rabbi Yosef. 5, Rabbi Eliezer. 6, Rabbi Akiva. 7, Rabbi Yoshua. I know this list doesn't mean anything, so let me tell you what it means. The first 4 are the 4 students of Rabbi Akiva that survived the Adriatic persecution. So those are the people that were sitting there with Rabbi Judah the Prince, and they were his sources. That's why they're on every page. Then we have 2 other people. Well, we have Rabbi Akiva himself, their teacher, and the 2 other people are Rabbi Akiva's teachers. In other words, what we have in the Mishnah, it may have been compiled by Rabbi Judah the Prince, but it is Rabbi Akiva's Torah. So we're getting Rabbi Akiva's Torah in the Mishnah. So that's why his influence. He is the source of our Torah. So those midrash that he does, that is halakha today. That's where it comes from originally. So to keep that in mind, that's where the Jewish religion, Rabbinic Judaism, comes from. It is from that event of the writing of the Mishnah, this codification of the traditions that Rabbi Akiva created in the previous generation, and the attempt to preserve the traditions of the temple. Another thing to notice, we think of it as the Mishnah as a codex of Jewish laws. What we do on Hanukkah, what we do on Rosh Hashanah, how to keep kosher, that's what we think. But in fact, this is not what the Mishnah is at all. It actually discusses very little about how to be a Jew and what to do in the day-to-day. The Talmud already extrapolates from all these things and tells you what to do day-to-day. But the Mishnah is a manual for building the temple. It tells you on what dates exactly you're supposed to sacrifice what, and how the priests are supposed to slaughter each kind of animal, and what the dimensions of the temple are, and how you're supposed to purify during the temple, and in general how a polity of a independent Jewish polity centered around the temple, how it should function. It's a manual for the rebuilding of the temple. And that's why Rabbi Judah the Prince was doing what he was doing. Because remember, he said we shouldn't fast. He said we shouldn't fast because he believed that a Jewish temple will be established in the near future. He wasn't making a plan for these people to memorize for 2,000 years. He was making a plan for a generation, a few years. The temple would be built, and it can't be rebuilt if we don't know the way God likes it. If you're preparing and burning incense in the wrong way, that won't placate God. It'll make him angry. It's very important that it'll be exactly accurate to the way it should be in the second temple. So that's what he was anticipating. He was making a manual for the establishment of the third temple, which he thought will come very soon. And to do that, he assembled the students of Rabbi Akiva, and they are the source that created this Mishnah. And that Mishnah didn't end up being the manual for a new temple being established. It became an establishment, a job of a Tana, and then a Morai, a Sayer, and eventually the rabbis. That is the source of the rabbis. Rabbi Judah the Prince is the first rabbi. He established that position. That position originally was to memorize the Mishnah, and eventually became the rabbis we know today. So at the time, there were other Judaism. Most Jews in the world were Greek-speaking Jews. They had their own synagogues. They didn't have rabbis. They had synagogoi, they called them. We just don't know what their rights were and what they believed or what they read because they're gone. They were all eliminated. The kind of Jew that survived is the Judaism around those rabbis that Rabbi Judah the Prince established. That's the source of our Judaism. Okay. Any other questions?
And lest you, one of the things I love about Akiva being the hero of our tradition is that the legend is that he didn't start learning until he was 40. So one of the things I love about our tradition is like the hero, the one who knows the most, the one on who the whole thing is based, is not someone who grew up in private Jewish day school.
He's an outsider. I know how to do this. And
like listens on the roof and and I just think we should all like really take that in, that, whenever we start learning, our tradition says that you can also become.
Yeah, even at 40, you can start and you might be the greatest rabbi of the generation.
So, I just have to say it answered a question I had always, which is why Akiva wins all the argument, because it's his students telling.
Yeah, he's always the good guy, because if your school is the one that's writing the story, then you're always the good guy.
Right. It goes your way.
Yeah.
Who's going to argue with a martyr?
Right. Thank you all for your, as always, time and attention. We will make a Mishaberach. Mishaberach Avotinu Avraham Yitzchak V'Yaakov.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.